Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wes Clark joins us live to give us his perspective on the state of the conflict overseas. General Clark, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Brett.
What's your assessment right now as Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has signed this agreement? They apparently say the troops are going to move out of Georgian territory. But what happens if they don't?
Well, first of all, it's a big test for Medvedev to see if he's really in charge. Right now, it doesn't look like he is. I think it's going to take continuing pressure, and above all, we've got to get the OSCE observers in there on the ground, so we're not relying on, no offense intended, but the news media. They're not the right sources to report where the Russian troops are or are not. What we need is direct connection from the bottom to the top, so with a credible source, and put the pressure on these Russians to pull back.
You know, on the politics side of this domestically, the Obama campaign and Obama advisor Susan Rice came out and said that John McCain was shooting from the hip by talking about Russian aggression from the start. Over days, it developed that really Russia was not abiding by what it said it was going to do. Do you think that John McCain was too harsh on Russia from the beginning?
Well, I haven't followed all the statements that closely, so I'm not in the right position to be able to give you that kind of an assessment. I will tell you this, that in any case like this, there are two sides to this. There's a long record of ethnic cleansing going back to the early 1990s that needs to be looked at. But we should have anticipated this. You know, when we are inviting countries to join NATO, they have to have resolved all their border issues, and this border issue was never resolved adequately. We shouldn't have tolerated the presence of these Russian peacekeepers or enforcers there in South Ossetia and Abkhazia indefinitely, but we did, starting in the 1990s. We never really could put the pressure on to get the political dialogues underway, and this is sort of the consequence of this. And there are other hot spots around Eastern Europe where this play could be continued by the Russians.
But do you agree with how the Bush administration has handled this so far?
Well, I think it's been, first of all, we don't know all the facts about this. As I said, it didn't seem to me, although I certainly want Georgia to become a member of NATO, and I'm very proud of the fact that we brought so many of these countries in Eastern Europe into NATO, the countries have to meet membership criteria. It wasn't clear to me that Georgia had met that membership criteria in terms of having its border issues resolved. Secondly, it's not clear to me the warnings that went back and forth. We don't really know about that. We know Secretary of State Rice apparently warned the Georgians a month ago not to do this. Her spokesman said, don't do it. Were the Georgians talking to somebody else? Who else could have been they talking to, and what could they have said? What would have led the Georgians to believe they could suddenly take military action, go directly against Russian troops, and not provoke this kind of reaction? And what did they expect the West to do? So I think there's some unanswered questions in going through this. Our best response right now is to emphasize Western unity, resolve, and determination. So I'm very glad that the Chancellor of Germany and the President of France are involved in this thing, as well as the United States, because I think that kind of unity is essential.
The reason I bring up the politics of this is because it has become a major issue on the campaign trail. Surrogates for both candidates, you're a surrogate for Barack Obama, have talked about this. Here's what Governor Tim Kaine of Virginia said in the first days of this conflict after Senator Barack Obama spoke out about the Georgia-Russia situation.
I'm very, very happy that the senator's request for a ceasefire has been complied with by President Medvedev.
He said that it had been complied with, and that days later it turned out that Russia really was thumbing its nose at the ceasefire. Were there some mixed signals in the Obama camp at the beginning days of this conflict?
Well, let me make clear that I'm not a surrogate for Barack Obama. I'm just here as an independent analyst on the show with you, Brett.
But you support Barack Obama.
But I do support him. I think that the fact that Russia signed a ceasefire, we knew all along that there was going to be. It's one thing to sign a ceasefire. It's another thing to actually have it complied with and get those Russian troops out of there. There was some ambiguity in the way the document was written and proposed by the French. And in my experience in the Balkans and in working with against the Serbs in that conflict. You have to be very, very careful. These people are really good lawyers, and when they look at an agreement that says that for an unspecified period some additional security can be maintained in place, you can interpret that any one of 100 ways, and that was in the document in some way. And so they may have a figment of some rationality that says, hey, we can keep our forces here, but they shouldn't be allowed to keep the forces there. The trick on a ceasefire and a pullback is, okay, you got it signed, now enforce it, and that's what we must be doing now.
Okay, last question. Some blogs have you as a possible vice presidential pick for Barack Obama. What do you think about that?
I think it's entirely up to Barack Obama. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm happy to have people who believe in me out there and support me, and I think that Barack Obama will he'll make a great decision and pick a good person to be his vice president.
All right. General Wesley Clark, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.